Right, let's begin. Welcome today. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody. This is Dr. Shell with MBA Admit. We're very happy to be here today again with a GMAT Club. Today we're talking about the E-MBA return on investment. And so we're talking about some things like salary increases and promotions, but also much broader than that. So let's go through and get a little perspective with all this. First, let me tell you a little bit about our company. We at mbaadmit.com have been around, and I've been personally doing admissions advising for over 30 years. The company is about 21 years old and predates all the top E-MBA programs. The significance of that is that we've been around to see all of these top programs from year one of their existence. So we have a very strong understanding of what they're looking for, their preferences, and so forth. We've had success with helping candidates to all the top US E-MBA programs, as well as those abroad in Europe. We have a team of advisors that help with the admissions consulting, and clients are able to work directly with me. So here's some of the schools that we've had success with. We welcome you to come to our website, send your resume, or fill in the info of the profile evaluation form. We are more than happy to give you our perspective about how strong you are as an E-MBA candidate. So let's go over some E-MBA basics before we get into the discussion about return on investment. The term E-MBA is abbreviated for the name Executive Master of Business Administration. E-MBA programs are targeting older candidates. By older, we mean basically those people with 7 years or more of experience. That can be someone in their late 20s all the way up to the mid 50s. The reason that these type of programs are more of interest to people of that age range is because by then, when you're more advanced in your career, you have a very demanding schedule, you have huge responsibilities. Oftentimes, you have a family that you're taking care of, and people of that tenure do not want to have to stop their work and relocate. So these programs recognize that in most cases, you do not need to stop working or relocate. The programs will meet on weekends, every other weekend, once every 3 or 4 weekends, or sometimes in 1-week blocks once a month. An important thing to bear in mind when you're thinking about the E-MBA is that the E-MBA is your route. The degree itself says MBA. So some people are concerned about if they take this route, what will people think of the E-MBA? But it's actually an MBA that you get. And so you become an MBA graduate of the school that you attend. Many top business schools at this point offer E-MBA programs. So Wharton was one of the first large scale, fully, full steam programs out there. It was wonderful, even 15 years ago. And ever since then, we've seen others come up and are also amazing opportunities from Columbia to Berkeley to MIT. One additional benefit of the E-MBA route is that when someone is older in their career, more higher up in their tenure, they don't have time to stop and study for the GMAT. That takes a lot of time to prepare for the GMAT and do well. So the schools worked with GMAC, which is the maker of the GMAT, to bring out another test called the Executive Assessment a few years back. This is much easier to prepare for, and so it gives you a good alternative. Most people can prepare in about a month and do well, and so that makes the entrance easier for you. And then on top of that, there are some schools that do not require any standardized test at all. So that's MIT, Kellogg, Cornell, NYU, among others. And so it just means that the schools are trying to make it accessible to good candidates. With the E-MBA option, it is definitely a myth that you have to be significantly older to do well and get into a top school. You don't have to have an executive title, and you can be as young as 5 to 7 years of work experience and get into some of these programs. There's also a myth that you can be too old for these programs. I've not seen that yet, and so even if you're in your mid 50s, some of these schools will entertain your candidacy. College GPA. Some people are worried about, look, when I was in college, I wasn't focused, I didn't do well, and I've had a great career since then. So they're worried about the GPA standing in the way of admission to a top school. The schools recognize that for many candidates, college was about 15 years ago, and so it's no longer an accurate metric of where they are potentially. And so they give you opportunities to demonstrate in other ways that you have the quantitative capabilities to do the program. And so in many cases, people can override a low GPA to get into a top university. Non-traditional candidates. Again, the E-Mba is open to a wide variety of candidates. And so just recognize that you can have a whole gamut of different backgrounds that the cohort comes from. And so we've seen engineers, doctors, veterinarians, nonprofit leaders, a whole diversity. So don't think that your background will keep you out of a top program. So down to the nuts and bolts, the financial costs. If any of you have looked into this, you recognize that these E-Mba programs are very expensive, relatively speaking. And so studies cite that the average cost of an E-Mba program is around $75,000 a year or $150,000 total. When you look at the very top schools, they're even more expensive than that. So here's just a sample. These numbers are taken directly from websites. So Wharton will be over $200,000. So will Columbia and Kellogg. Booth will be around $194,000. MIT, $178,000 plus some change, and that's only tuition. So it is a big investment of money. You really need to go to each of the websites and take a good look at what is included in that figure. So they may give you a number of, for instance, Wharton, $210,000. But you need to look and see, is that room and board? Is it just tuition? So that you can try to compare apples to apples when you're looking at the tuitions of different schools. But by any measure, that is a big investment. So the question is it worth that investment? Well, here's some different ways to think about return on investment. I would suggest that you don't think about it only in terms of your salary increase or getting a promotion. Those are both very important things to consider, but there's a broad set of additional things to think about. And so let's walk through some of those. Credibility and brand. Now, when I talk to people who are interested in getting an E-Mba, this is one of the biggest things that they're talking about, that they want the credibility that comes with the school that they will attend. So just remember that you will get the brand of the school that you attend. So Wharton, Columbia, MIT, those top schools are known for excellence. And so that becomes your brand. Also, for you, that can translate into greater credibility, influence, and authority. Skills and knowledge. These schools have built up fantastic programs over the past decade or so. And so when you go in, the students rave about all the things they learn, all the new knowledge, all the cutting edge knowledge, the new frameworks. And those things, in addition to interacting with professors and really talented peers, all of that allows them to really sharpen a great set of skills. So from leadership and soft skills to hard skills, to business fundamentals, industry-specific knowledge. It's just really a great opportunity. You also have opportunities to work directly with countries, to go to countries and work in companies there. Sometimes you're working with government entities in other countries to do assessments. You're also able to get mentorship opportunities with successful entrepreneurs, which the school in many cases will arrange. And so it is a wonderful opportunity for you to take advantage of all these sources of the curriculum and resources and really sharpen up your skill set. Salary increase, of course, is a major thing that people will consider when they think about paying a tuition that is as sizable as it is for most E-Mba programs. And so, the information is a little bit thin about exactly what is the bounce. But there's two sources that you may want to take a look at. So the first is the Executive MBA Council's 2020 Exit Survey. From what they are seeing, they say that a typical E-Mba graduate enjoys a 14.1% increase in compensation after completing the program. And so someone who began the program with $169,000 or so might have 193 right after completing the program, so $193,000. Another source is the Financial Times, and so I put the two links there at the bottom of this slide. You might want to go take a look because they go university by university and they tell you exactly what they think the growth of salary is. And what they're trying to do is take a look from before the person starts the E-Mba until a year or two after, what is the growth. They say it's around about 60% when you are attending one of these top universities, so Wharton, MIT, Columbia, and so forth. Promotion, also another important metric. Again, a good source is the Executive MBA Council's 2020 exit survey. They say that 53% of E-Mba students reported that they received additional responsibilities during the program. 39% said that they received a promotion during the program. And the way that they interpret that is because this is happening during the program and not after, that the employers are actually seeing a very significant impact on skills. They're recognizing the new ideas that each of these candidates is bringing back to the company. And so they're being rewarded even before the program ends. Professional network is another important thing to consider. This is obviously something that will last your entire professional career, is that you inherit the network of the business school. Another thing that I remind candidates as they're trying to choose between universities is that you should also bear in mind that you're inheriting the network of the entire university. So let's take Columbia Business School as an example. When you graduate, you will be an MBA of the Columbia University. But on top of that, you have to remember that you become part of the entire Columbia University alumni network. And that has one of the best colleges in the world, one of the best law schools, one of the best medical schools, an amazing journalism school. And so when you put that pool of professionals together, it really is a formidable network. And so Columbia is a wonderful university to choose. So again, as you're comparing the various schools, think about the fact that you will not only get the business school as your alumni network, but the entire school. And all that you can do with that is tremendous: the access to job opportunities, ability to brainstorm with talented professionals when you have business ideas, ability to find partners for business ventures, find investors, and also locate ideal talent to hire. Truly is a great opportunity. Return on investment, job and career change. This one has been one that's been under debate for quite a while. So some people they're under the impression that the executive MBA is not the right route to take if you want to change jobs or industries. And I get some people calling me and saying, hey, shouldn't I be looking at the full-time program? Well, usually if you are the age of an E-Mba, so say E-Mba candidate, so say 35 years old, 37, 42, you have aged out of the full-time pool for most top universities. So it's really not even an option. So the E-Mba offers a great opportunity. What you should be comparing is, can you get those job changes without an MBA, or is the MBA going to facilitate your ability to change industries or jobs? And I think that the answer is yes. And so a lot of candidates who have gone into these E-Mba programs, they have used that opportunity to change jobs and careers. The schools themselves have changed on this point. So about 10 years ago, you would have found that most top schools did not want you to try to use the E-Mba to change jobs. They wanted people to simply work their way up in their existing company. Today, they recognize that a lot of people do want that change. And so they've opened up their career services to E-Mba candidates, which means that you have access to figure out what alumni are in various organizations, companies, so you can reach out to them. You can also take part in any recruiting that is occurring. Relative to the full-time program, there will be less recruiting, but the point is that you will be given resources that aid your desires to change jobs or change industries. So it is a good thing to consider if that is what you are wanting to do. Personal network. Now, this is one of the softer benefits of the E-Mba, but people will rave about how when they attended a program, they were able to just immerse themselves in this cohort that had so many same aspirations and interests and ideas. And it was really like getting this whole bundle of now new lifelong friends. They really appreciate that part of the program, and it definitely can be life-changing. And then finally, when you become an alumni member of the business school and the broader university, you will, on an ongoing basis, have access to continuing education in most cases. So free continuing education in the forms of webinars or alumni events that are organized around business ideas and themes. So many people do appreciate that. They appreciate being kept up on the most recent ideas, frameworks, approaches to leadership, and you get those again as free benefits on a continuing education basis with the school in many cases once you become an alumni member. So those are things to think about. When you think about all that, is it worth the investment? I've never had anyone attend one of these E-Mba programs and say they regret it. For most people, they just rave about it. They say it's been life-changing. For people who did not do well in college, they feel like it's their second chance to get a great brand. And even for successful entrepreneurs who have the wonderful pedigrees, it just gives them all these new tools and all these new contacts to take their businesses to the next level. So people do rave, and it really is a great opportunity. Oh, one last thing. I don't want to forget this legacy factor. That is one additional thing I added in here, which is, it's a soft factor, and some people will even dispute that this one exists, but many people do believe that if you get into one of these top schools, that it does confer benefits to your children potentially. So they will argue that if you've gone to a great school, then your child will have a better chance of getting into that same school or a school like it. They call that the legacy impact. And so for those people who believe in that, that is actually another benefit, that if you get into one of these top schools, you might be positioning your child to have better outcomes once they're trying to get into colleges or graduate school. Again, it's a debatable point, but some people do believe that that's there. So those are some of the factors to consider. Feel free to reach out to us if you like. If you would like to have a profile evaluation, I'm more than happy to let you know what we think about your profile. And I know I'm going to take some Q&A in a second, but here is information about how you can reach out to us. So I'm more than happy to take some questions. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see the questions. Thank you for being with us today, and let's get on to this. All right, I believe I can still hear you. So let's see if we get some questions. Okay, so here's one. Which E-Mba questions are welcoming of 45-year-old candidates? This is labeled number 2. I didn't actually see the question number 1 if there was one. So, okay, so people over 45, I still think that most people in the ages 45 and under, 46, you pretty much have all the E-Mba programs to still choose from. When someone's a super late 40, so 49, 50, 51 and above, you may find that certain schools do favor you over others, and that might be MIT, which has a program that meets once a week, once a month, and that is definitely aiming and targeting an older candidate. And then there's another popular one for people who are more advanced in age. It's a hard way to say that because 49, 50 is not that old these days. But Columbia Business School has a global E-Mba program that, again, tends to attract people who are older. So you might want to look at those too. But for the most part, if you are 46 and under, I think that most of the top E-Mba programs are receptive to your candidacy. Okay, which E-Mba programs are more welcoming of younger candidates? Again, I kind of make a distinction. 31, 32, I think you can be successful at pretty much all of the top programs, potentially with the exception of MIT Sloan, because MIT Sloan really does want a very mature candidate, someone who's very high up in their tenure. And so if someone is 32, they can still do well at Sloan. It's just that you have to be very advanced in your tenure. And there are some people who they might be CEO of their own companies, or they've worked their way up to a very high level in a company at a young age. And so in that case, their age will not work against them. But in many cases, someone who's 31 may not have the tenure on a traditional track to be very attractive to Sloan. So it just may mean that it's a harder shot for you. But other than that, I think that 31, 32-year-olds pretty much have access to most of these top E-Mba programs if they have strong records. When you're in the younger, like late 20s, so 27, 28, 29, there are places that tend to prefer younger candidates, or at least be more open to younger candidates. And that might be Columbia, New York University, Kellogg, Cornell. Those are places that tend to be more open to people in the 20s. I also think that Booth, people have good outcomes there as well. So, do your homework, take a look at the profiles for each of these schools. But end of the day, when you can convey that you've had some great leadership, your age should not be working against you. And by the way, leadership does not necessarily simply mean that you had direct reports. There's plenty of people who have not had direct reports that do well at these universities. And so leadership can take many different forms, and it's just truly your job to articulate for the schools through the essays and through the recommendations, the quality and nature of the leadership that you've shown. Other questions? Okay, so E-Mba programs in Europe, and how do they differ from US schools? I think that on the whole, these schools all present great curriculums. So they try to give you a brush up in your business fundamentals, and they provide electives as well. The schools can vary in terms of the emphasis of the electives. And so if you're looking at real estate, you might be more targeting schools like Wharton and Columbia and Cornell that have those specialties. If it's healthcare, you may be looking at Yale or Wharton. And so same for the European schools, that they may have specialties as well, but on the whole, they're all outstanding programs. Some of those European schools have 1-year E-Mba programs, which some people think is a disincentive because they think it'll go too fast. Other people are attracted to that. But the most popular schools that I have, seen among my candidates are schools that include in Europe, INSEAD, Oxford, London Business School. London does a joint program with Columbia, which is called the Columbia Global E-Mba. HEC, IESE, those are all schools that people are targeting. So I think you have great options when it comes to Europe as well. So does ranking matter when it comes to an E-Mba? Well, I would always encourage someone to recognize that you become an alumni of the business school. And so, as I said, it's the E-Mba route, but end of the day, you are an MBA from the business school. And so you should look at E-Mba rankings when you're thinking about, will the curriculum be something that you like? But if it were me personally, I would put the greater emphasis on the business school ranking, because, and I mean not the E-Mba, but the business school itself, which that reputation is on the whole derived from the full-time program, because that is your brand, right? And so if you went the E-Mba route through Columbia Business School, your brand is Columbia Business School. And if you went the E-Mba route to Cornell, then your brand is Cornell. And so I would put the emphasis there. I'd take a look at what the full-time rankings are. And also just remember that rankings change year to year, but most people will have a pretty firm and consistent view about what are the top schools. And so one of the magazines could come out and say Wharton is number 7, but everyone's not going to believe that. They're going to say, no, Wharton's number 1 or number 2. And so I think it's those, the longer standing reputation should always also guide you as well. So take a look at full-time rankings, take a look at E-Mba just for the curriculums, or what it tells you about the curriculum. And then also think about the longer term reputation of the schools. And with all of that, I think you can make sensible choices about which of those schools should be making your cut and should be your top choices as well. Well, okay, so this question is about how do I rate full-time E-Mba programs with part-time ones from a career change perspective. Oh, I see what the question is. Okay, so full-time E-MBA programs. That may actually be confusing to some people because you may think the E-MBA programs are part-time, essentially. You're flying in on the weekends or 1 week a month. There are two programs that where they allow you to stop working. And so one of those is the MIT Sloan's Fellows. The other is Stanford MSX. Now, Stanford, the label is not MBA, which some people, it bothers them a great deal. So they don't go for that program just because they won't get the MBA degree. It's gonna say MSX. Um, and so those two allow you to stop working, and the implication is that, yes, you can use that to change a job, and so those are much more tailored to that. Part-time ones, I think, kind of fall in the same category as the part-time E-MBA type of thing. So whether it's a part-time program or an E-MBA program that meets on weekends, you have to do a little bit more networking yourself. You have to be a little bit more proactive, whereas the full-time ones that allow you to stop working, there's just going to be more recruiting opportunities built into that. So if you are trying to change careers, some people might argue those are better, but those are only two programs and they are small. So the odds of getting into those two are going to be a lot harder than trying to get into a regular E-MBA program. So just bear that in mind that, those are in demand because they are kind of stop working and focus only on the MBA type of thing. I expect that we're going to see more and more of those pop up because, again, the schools are recognizing that people want changes sometimes and they want that pause. And so far, like I said, there's also two additional programs to mention besides MIT and Stanford MSX. Kellogg has a 1-year full-time program, and so does Cornell. So you can always look at those two as well. But again, they're small and demand is pretty high for those. Okay, I'll take about two more questions, I think. So maybe two or three. So here's one. What's an example of someone changing a job through the E-MBA program? Um, I think I've mentioned this before in a webinar, but one of my most impressive changes that I've seen was a candidate who went in who was the head of technology for a state. So in the United States, one of our states, he was in charge of technology for the government state. And he went into the program with that credential. He came out having been named global head of technology for a major, like really one of the top food and beverage companies. And it was just an impressive role that he landed, a huge increase in pay. And he did that through an E-MBA program. So like I said, it is possible. You've got networks, you've got alumni to draw on. You have opportunities going directly into some of these companies. And so the E-MBA really can be effective as a tool for changing a job or an industry. Okay, so financing options. People, of course, they would love to not have to pay for this out, but themselves, obviously, it's a lot of money. But the schools do look at candidates on the whole and say, look, you're working, you're making a decent salary, you can pay for this. You may not want to, but you can. And so you get, for most people, that would mean that they might take a loan for some of the tuition. Some people are fortunate and they have companies that are willing to pay. And that's some good information GMAT Club is mentioning here. But companies sometimes will sponsor the applicant to go through the program fully or in part. So you should be looking into all those options. Like, does it have a program to pay for tuition? If not, can you convince them to help pay for some of your tuition? And then, of course, there are loans that you can take. Some of the schools do offer scholarships, but it's not very many of them. And I've seen many more go to women than others because women are underrepresented in the pool, and the schools are trying to reach out to get more women in the programs. So scholarships are much more limited. And so you'll have to look at some of those other routes. So if you're trying to get financing. Okay, so someone is saying MIT Sloan is hard to get into at 30. Now, I need to make a distinction between MIT Sloan, the E-Mba program, and MIT Sloan Fellows Program. Those are two different things. So the Fellows is the one that is the one-year program where you stop working, which is, it's harder to get into in general because it's smaller. MIT Sloan, the E-Mba program, is the one that tends to target an older, more tenure, someone higher up in tenure. So on the whole, a 30-year-old may have a harder time getting into that program. We get plenty of people who are that age, 30 in, but I do know that we've got to handle the application carefully and make sure we're conveying the right type of leadership. And so, yes, MIT Sloan E-Mba does prefer to have someone who has a higher tenure than some of the other schools. Stanford MSX targets, I would say, an actually younger candidate. So I would tend to say someone between 27 and up is fine for MSX. And I actually don't necessarily think that there's a cap. I think that the person I typically see applying there might be between 27 and 35, but I don't actually feel that there's an upper cap. So I think that they look at each candidate individually and decide, is the person attractive? So I think maybe one more question here. Okay, and so I think I already answered this. So full-time E-Mba programs where you stop working. And so those, again, they may not carry the E-Mba label, but they are targeting they're open to candidates who are older. So as I said, once you're 32 and older, many of these top MBA programs, the full-time, will say that they feel like you're too old for their cohort. And so that gives you the E-Mba option at that point. But there are a select number of one-year programs that are open to older candidates. They're not necessarily labeled E-Mba, but they're MBA programs. And so that would be the MIT Sloan Fellows. Kellogg has a one-year MBA. Cornell has a one-year MBA. And then Stanford has the MSX, which is a Master's of Science, I believe. And so you don't get the label MBA, but it's basically at the business school. It's essentially their equivalent of an E-Mba. And so that's also an option. All right. It was nice to be here. And I will be happy to hear from any of you should you want us to do a profile evaluation and let you know what we think about your profile. All right. Thanks so much for joining us today, and good luck in your E-Mba and MBA journeys.